a conflict of interest violation, NAFTA negotiations seemingly going off the rails, and major negative updates with regard to the legal border crossing crisis. There's so many things happening in Canadian politics today. I couldn't pick just one topic to come to you with. So let's start with one of Justin Trudeau's most senior advisors, his closest friends, Cabinet Minister Dominic LeBlanc. Now, some of you will remember that about a month ago, I came to you with a video about this issue around the Arctic surf clam licenses, or the clam scam. Watch that video if you haven't watched it yet, because it'll give you the background on just how crazy the decision that Dominic LeBlanc made that led to this ruling today. And that was the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner found that Dominic LeBlanc broke conflict of interest rules by approving a lucrative surf clam license to a company that was fronted by his wife's first cousin. Now, if this had been a Conservative cabinet minister, of course we would have round-the-clock satellite coverage. We would have, special graphics and at-issue panels all day. This has been an issue that has been largely underreported by the national media, and it is really quite serious. So make sure that you come up to speed on this issue. If you haven't yet, watch that video. And also, big credit to my colleague Todd Doherty, who actually has raised this in the House of Commons for months. It was him who found out about this issue, started questioning Dominic LeBlanc, who tried to say nothing to see here, folks. Of course he did. And then Todd actually wrote to the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner, who triggered this investigation, and the results today came out. So, of course, a Conservative member of Parliament working hard to hold the Justin Trudeau Liberals to account. Now, obviously, this is something that we are going to try to prevent in the future. We will be questioning Justin Trudeau and Dominic LeBlanc about this next week as the House resumes, because Dominic LeBlanc remains a cabinet minister, and he's a cabinet minister that's in charge of the committee that, among other things, is looking at where to house people crossing the border illegally at Roxham Road, including houses or hotels in the Greater Toronto Area. Which brings me to the next issue, and that is the front page of the Globe and Mail today says something that I've been saying all along, and that's that the asylum seeker or the illegal border crossers that are coming from safe spaces like upstate New York, crossing into Canada illegally, that this is having a huge impact on Canada's immigration system, specifically our Immigration Refugee Board. Now, we know it's having a big impact on other issues as well, or other areas, including our social welfare system, our ability to house people in subsidized housing. I could go on, but today specifically, this Globe and Mail story talks about the fact that the Immigration Refugee Board, that body that actually processes asylum claims, is backlogged for years. Now, I've been talking about this for about 2 years now. And I remember the media saying, well, that it's not a years-long backlog. Where are you getting that information from? We actually had government documents that were reported in the media that projected this type of delay. And now that's coming to pass, and it's right there, plain as day, in the Globe and Mail. Now, look, many of you know that I've offered some very concrete policy solutions on how we close the loophole in the Safe Third Country Agreement to ensure that people can't cross the border illegally into Canada and then claim asylum after already having been in safe spaces like upstate New York. So we've got very concrete policy measures that are out there on how we would do that. You can read through one of my policy declarations on my website on all of the, or any of the press conferences that I've had on how to do that. Certainly we'll keep holding the government to account as Parliament resumes on Monday. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve that I hope to use next week to force them to take action on this. But today's article in the Globe and Mail just proves the fact that, Justin Trudeau can look and call me a fearmonger all he wants, but the data is out there. This is actually breaking the Canadian immigration system, and it's, really reducing the integrity of our ability to process asylum seekers in a fair and planned and orderly manner. So major changes are needed. We've suggested some very salient and concrete actions on how to do that. Looking forward to having debates on the House in the next year. But clearly, at this point, Justin Trudeau, he is trying to make this situation permanent by funding hundreds of millions of dollars into housing people in hotels. That is setting up all of the permanent infrastructure at Roxham Road. That is unacceptable. We need to close the loophole in the agreement, and we need to ensure that when people are trying to cross into Canada illegally from safe spaces like upstate New York, that agreement applies to the entire border and that they are returned to the United States. The next story that came out came out yesterday. I saw it later in the day, and that was in the National Post, and it talked about a man whose deportation was halted because his gang tattoos could cause people to think that he's in a gang. So the subheading on this particular story in the National Post says, the decision to grant this man another hearing means that the same tattoos that prompted his deportation order have now served him from immediate deportation. So from what I understand in this story, a member who had talked to border officials about his gang tattoos and said that these indeed were tattoos that denoted his participation in the MS-13 gang. He talked about that in an interview, and then was subsequently found guilty of some other criminal charges. He had obviously a deportation order issued. He was not a Canadian citizen. But then when he went to his deportation appeal hearing, they basically said his counsel argued that he shouldn't be returned to El Salvador because he actually wasn't a member of the gang, and he got those as a joke or something, or he didn't know what he was doing, and that it would threaten his life in El Salvador. Now, to me, this is just beyond the pale. Many of you are rightly concerned about this situation because our legal system should prevent people that don't have a legal reason from being in Canada from being in Canada to begin with, but certainly people that have been convicted of serious crimes in Canada and have no legal reason to be here should not be able to remain in Canada. And this is why, of course, in our last government, the Conservative Party did put forward legislation to expedite the removal of people who have no legal reason to be in Canada who had committed crimes in an expeditious manner. This is something that Justin Trudeau needs to act on, and certainly there's been crickets from the Liberal Party since the story has broke. I've been out there commenting on this, and people will lose faith in the immigration system if there is any left to be had under Justin Trudeau when things like this happen. So again, we will be holding the government to account when Parliament resumes on Monday on ways to ensure that these sorts of things don't happen. Finally, I want to talk to you about a bit of a weird story that I saw, and it was kind of buried in the lead on NAFTA, and many of you have written to my office with great concerns about the NAFTA negotiation, and I'm worried about it as well, given the impact that it could have on the Canadian economy. But I heard, buried in one of these stories, it was that Chrystia Freeland, our Foreign Affairs Minister, appeared on Monday on a panel led by, I think, an American journalist called Taking on the Tyrant. And I saw the introduction to this panel, and it was, I would say, putting it mildly, it was not favorable to the current American administration. And putting aside feelings on, anybody, American politics for a second, like that aside, the job of the Foreign Affairs Minister is to, at this point in time, in this juncture, is to ensure that Canada has a deal on NAFTA. And I just know that if a Conservative cabinet minister had attended what could be construed as, mildly, an anti-Obama panel ever, never mind during the height of a trade agreement talk, that would have been a career-ending move in the eyes of the Canadian mainstream media. And there wasn't even a speculative word in the Canadian mainstream media on the impact that this could have on the NAFTA talks and whether or not this was the best use of judgment exhibited by our Foreign Affairs Minister. So the media didn't talk about this at all outside of some non-mainstream media outlets. And I just think that is alarming because, of course, that's going to have an impact on things. Anyway, I'm spending the rest of the week getting ready for Parliament's return on Monday, assuming that Justin Trudeau does not prorogue Parliament, that he'll actually come to account. And of course now, an election could be called at any point in time. There's been speculation about a fall election. There's been speculation about a spring election. But we're now at the point where I think many Canadians know that Justin Trudeau has failed in a lot of different areas, and Canadians are looking for an alternative government and an alternative vision. And I'm very confident that the policies that the Conservative Party are putting forward, that we have been putting forward, immigration, economic policy. That's what we're going to be focusing on in the fall session. Ideas, concrete action to show the Canadians that we're, Justin Trudeau needs to go and that there's a strong team waiting to form government and fix some of these issues. We need to be competitive again as a country. We need to ensure that we have order and discipline and fairness at the heart of our immigration system. I could go on, but this is where the rubber hits the road. So 4 stories today, many more that I could have picked from, but Justin Trudeau needs to go. Working hard for you in Calgary. Have a great day.